Calculated properties. Arguably one of the most difficult concepts for participants to understand in my PowerShell classes. So in this episode, we're going to break down calculated properties and see what we can do with them. So to get things started off here, what we're going to do is we are going to gather a collection of objects. So to do that, I'm going to run the command get sim instance, and I'm going to do it against the sim class video controller resolution. Now, when I run this, I get a bunch of objects, a collection of objects that we're going to be working with. Next up, I'm going to select out some of the properties that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to select out the horizontal and the vertical resolution properties. And when I do that, you can see that I have several objects that have been pulled, and I only have the horizontal resolution and the vertical resolution properties. Our next step will be to create the calculated property. Now, we need to understand that when an object is being passed from one commandlet to another, it is saved into a very special variable. Now, this variable, it's $_. You may have heard it referred to as money underscore, and it has an alias, an alter name of $PS item. Choose whichever one speaks to you. I'm going to use the $_. Next, we're going to provide two values in a hash table. The first value is called name. Now, in some environments, some text, you might hear it referred to as label. Name or label will work. I use name because that's the way I learned it. Anyhow, this is going to be the name of the new property that you are adding to the current object in the PowerShell pipeline. The second key is going to be the expression. This is where you provide that new property you're creating a value. Now let's take a look here what I've got on the screen. Here you can see I'm using the key of name, and we're going to call this property hrez. To give this property a value, we'll use expression. And then inside of its own set of curly braces, what we're going to do is we're going to call upon the current object in the PowerShell pipeline, dot, and then the name of a property that we want to use to populate the value of hrez. We've already established that the current object in the PowerShell pipeline has a property called hrez. So for every object that we pipe into it, it's going to calculate this new property. Let's take a look. All right, I am going to go ahead and run this code, but first let me split my screen so that it's a little easier for you to see the output. Here we go. And now what you can see, if we scroll up to the top, we have our original properties we kept of horizontal resolution, vertical resolution, and here is hrez. And notice I took the value of horizontal resolution and made it the value of hrez. Again, here I took the value of the horizontal resolution and made it the value of hrez. Now, there are different ways that you could actually write this. On the next line, I did it all in a single line. This is supposed to be an all spread out. So when you take a look at this, you'll notice I'm now separating them with a semicolon. The semicolon is only required when you do it all on the same line. And as we can see when we run this, we get the same answer. So let's go ahead and add in a second calculated property. To add another property to our output, we are going to first do a comma, because remember, whenever you use the property parameter of select object, it is a comma separated list. Next, we're going to create the name of our new property, which is going to be called vrez. The expression, or giving it value, will take the current object in the PowerShell pipeline, dot, the vertical resolution property, which is another property we already know is part of our output. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we run this code. And now you can see that we have a new property called vrez, and we can also see that its value has been populated from the current object in the PowerShell pipeline's vertical resolution property. Now, all the properties of the original object are available until you end that command with a pipe statement or pressing enter and letting it run. So we don't have to keep the original properties in the output. Take a look. In this example, you can see that I am doing my two calculated properties, but the original values of horizontal resolution and vertical resolution have been removed from the comma-separated list right after property. But it's okay. They're still going to work because those properties are available until the end of the select object commandlet. Now let's just simply renamed a property, but what if we actually had to do calculations? Inside of that expression, the curly braces, the script block, you can do whatever you want. So let's go ahead and create another calculate property, and this time it will be based on calculations. So here I'm going to add another property called resolution, and it is going to be calculated by taking the current object in the PowerShell pipeline's vertical resolution and multiplying it by the current object in the PowerShell pipeline's horizontal resolution. When we run this code, you can see in the right-hand column, we have got our answer. Now just to prove to you guys, 640 times 480. Let's see here, 640 times 480. 640 times 480, that gives us 307,200. 307,200. Our calculations worked. Now, a really cool thing is you can actually write code that goes inside of that expression. And whatever the final value is of that expression of whatever you calculated, that becomes the value of the property. Take a look at this. Here you can see I have another calculate property. Now this one is called definition. And to create a value for it, I'm actually putting in here an if-else statement. And it's going to be based on the resolution because definition, I either wanted to say standard, high def, 4K, or 8K. Let's take a look and see what happens. Now remember, for every object in the PowerShell pipeline, a new property called definition will be created, and it will run this code to see what the value should be. Here we go. Take a look at the output. So you can see the definition property has been created and the correct values have been calculated. Calculated properties is a very powerful tool, particularly when you can create your own properties as the object is moving through the PowerShell pipeline. This is not easy to grasp, but I encourage you to continue to seek out examples on the internet and practice so that you can leverage this very powerful technology. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. In the next episode, we'll tackle another question from one of my classes.